Okay, we're going live in 3, 2, 1.
Hello everyone and welcome to this event brought to you by Glasgow 2024, a WorldCon for our futures. It's been an enormous month for everyone associated with Glasgow 2024. We're officially a seated WorldCon, and we plan to bring you some amazingly exciting events in the run-up to 2024. We have one such event tonight with our guest Etienne Kubwabo. Welcome, Etienne.
Nice to meet you. I'm excited to be here tonight.
We're excited to have you, honestly, man. It's been such a long time coming. Now, before introductions, I will run over some bits and pieces of general housekeeping. Don't worry, I shan't take very long. First off, to webinar attendees, you should post your questions into the Q&A. Those on YouTube should ask their questions in the comment section, and our moderator team will relay them into the Q&A. By taking part in this event, you are agreeing to Glasgow 2024's Code of Conduct, which means no racism, homophobia, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, or transphobia. We operate a zero-tolerance policy on hate speech, and anyone behaving inappropriately will be removed. We don't expect any of that tonight. Now, I'm James from the Glasgow 2024 blog team. I love fantasy and science fiction. I'm a history nerd, and I love comics and local content, which is why I'm so excited about tonight's event. So let's begin, shall we? Welcome, Etienne. We're delighted to have you here tonight with us. First off, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Etienne Kubwabo. I'm a filmmaker and a comic book writer, and over the last 10 years when I've been in Scotland, I've shot and directed feature films, music videos, commercials, and about 3 years ago I got into comic books, actually creating my own comic books. I've always been a fan of comic books, and so I create stories for a living. I could call it dreaming for a living. So through comic books and other motion picture stuff, I'm into music. That's why you can see my comic book is linked to music. And I think when someone asks me to tell them about myself, I kind of like talk about my sort of career, and that's it. I hope after maybe tonight, you guys get to know me personally through the conversations that we're having. And I'm excited.
Awesome. It's always wonderful to talk to creative people and just find out how they operate, what's going on behind their minds. You know, everyone's different. Everyone has, their heartbeats in a different way. Could you tell us about this amazing comic that you've written, Beats of War? I've got it here. I've got the 3 issues here, all wonderful. Could you tell us a little bit about this comic you've written?
So Beats of War, I'll start off. It's a comic book that is based on my experiences moving from Congo to Scotland and struggling to fit in. When I moved to Scotland and decided to get into film and get to college, with the comic books, I wanted to create something that was unique, that was so grounded to my story and the sort of new world that I live in, which is Scotland. So the story really follows a character called E.T., who comes from a planet that is being attacked by robotic invaders, and he comes to Earth to find answers to save his planet from robotic invaders. Reasons why I said Earth is because Earth, with that character being half human, half alien, he has so much belief in human. Like even us being alive, there's so much hope that we always have amongst each other. Through hope and dreaming is something that keeps us going. So he believed in humans, and he goes on this journey to find answers to save his planet from robotic invaders. Why does he come to Scotland? Is because his mom is half human, half alien, and she's from Scotland. So this story really, Beats of War, follows E.T.'s journey on finding answers to save his planet. and encounters the Reza gang who ran the streets of Glasgow since the 1920s, which gets really, really interesting. So the Beats sort of stands for the music side of the comic book, and the war is sort of like what he's trying to sort of stop. And the story of Beats of War, really, when you look at the cover of each one you just held there, you can see his planet and you can see Glasgow, where he first lands. So the planet where it comes from represents Congo, and Glasgow, which is the playground of the story, is where I am now. And I felt like that was a super cool idea to bring those two wars together.
100%. I'm looking at the comic right now. You can see the Clyde, you can see the bridge, you can see the bridge. Yeah. It's so rooted in Glasgow, and we're going to get into all of that.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about the reception you've received to Beats of War? What are people saying?
The thing is, when I was about to release Beats of War, I had some close friends who were like, "Mate, like black people don't create comic books. No one is gonna want to read that. How you gonna promote that? You're not in touch with DC or Marvel." But I remember, because I used to DJ, I had these headphones, Beats by Dre headphones, that I noticed the way they did their marketing campaign, which was based on if someone does not know something you're trying to give them, they will not probably respond because they're not sure if they will like it. So what I did is gave out over 500 copies free of charge to everybody and asked them, please send a photo with a review of what you thought about Beats of War. And after that, it took off, it blew off. Everybody loved Beats of War. They've loved the story of the character, but more importantly, once they hear my story, where I come from, and my inspirations that I used to create the comic book, they've found that sort of originality in the story, and they have seen themselves or felt represented and felt like their city of where they come from is being sort of represented in that sense. So the reception has been amazing, and even up to now, we've gone past 20,000 copies sold independently, minimal marketing, and yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing, and we're just getting started.
I was going to bring up the news that you've sold now 20,000 copies of your book. How does that feel? Did you ever think that it would take off in the way it has?
I never thought that. I never thought that would take me 2 years to hit 20,000. I mean, we've gone past 20,000, but I'm just overwhelmed, and I'm super grateful about the sort of community here in Scotland that's helped me push it. Like, people retweet, people take photos with it. I never thought we were gonna land on 20,000, but I'm always optimistic when I do something and put my heart in there. I'm trying to sort of be as genuine and honest with myself, and I think readers can see that through your story. If you're trying to fake up or do something, you're trying to copycat something, people can tell it's too much BS. But if it's something really original, something people can connect to, people can see through that, and I guess that's why people have been able to receive it in that sense. So I'm very excited, and 20,000 copies, that's nothing. Like, there's a big world population, a lot of comic book lovers that we still need to reach. So I'm very excited.
100%. And as you said, in my opinion, it's a completely original work that I haven't ever encountered anything like this before. I love the Glasgow elements of it. I was a local kid. I love the Glasgow elements.
Nice.
So we're going to move on now into the meat of things. We're going to talk first, I think, about comic books and superheroes. I think it's something we're both going to enjoy speaking of.
Yeah.
What drew you to the superhero genre?
I'm into like science fiction sort of superhero, into anime as well. But the first ones that I ever got exposed to was Spider-Man. I think Spider-Man is like the most popular, right? Like everywhere. And Black Panther. And there's a French one called The Adventures of Tintin, which I used to watch on TV along with Spider-Man. Those are like my super like go-to characters that I grew up on. So those are very exciting. But obviously I like other superheroes, like from the Justice League, Superman. Batman is like, you know, super badass. Like, who doesn't like Batman? But yeah, those are like some of the characters that I really do love. Yeah.
And what age were you when you started loving superheroes, when you started, acknowledging this world out there of superheroes and powers and comic books in general?
I think I was about 7, 8 years old, and I got in a lot of trouble because I watched a lot of TV. And every time my mom went to work, she's like, "Etienne, homework, and you better not switch on the TV until we get back to work." And that's sort of an African culture, right? So we had this broken 80s TV, that, those big TVs from the 80s, right? We had one of them at the back of our house that did not have the inside parts. So every time mom said, like, "You're not gonna watch a lot of TV," because I've been watching Spider-Man and all this stuff, and I'm very excited, I'm curious. So every time they went to work, I would get my brothers and sisters to lie in the grass at the back of our house, and then I'll put my head through the back of the TV and start, sort of throwing spider webs and stuff like that, and they're like, they were laughing. Every time I bring up this story on Christmas, they're like, "Etienne, you're crazy." And I remember then I sort of have this image when it was sunny and we laughed about those moments. And about 7 years old, that's when the sort of comic book excitement and geeky world excited me. But I had not got a chance to sort of have actually a physical copy of a comic book to read. So yeah, but that was the age it started off.
Sure. It seems as well from what you've just said that from the very early days, that link between family and your superhero journey was already there, and is that made its way into your writing as well, would you say?
Yeah, I think, it's always been there, because I've always loved that sort of idea, because when I was a little kid or very young, I've always wondered, because obviously I didn't ask people about geography, where we were, what part of the world was. And then when I started watching other characters that were from other countries, and in my head I thought my own country was the only country in the world. And then when I started figuring out there is more to the universe, to the planet we are on, I was super fascinated about it, and I was curious to want to find out. So you can tell that whole excitement got me into trouble. And up to date, I feel like for me, escape, just imagining how other civilization will be living out there, it's super exciting for me to just stay awake and be able to either hear that NASA has announced something about the aliens coming to Earth, and I'm getting my bags to Area 51 or something, but things like that. It's always fascinated me from young age up to now.
100%. Can I ask you about what superhero stories have been around for a very long time, and in the past few years we've seen some excellent comics that have subverted some of the classic superhero tropes. Where do you see the future of superhero stories and superhero comics? Will we see more subversive comics that like to show us the moral nuances of these characters, or do you see the true hero being triumphant in the end?
I think superheroes, I mean, with even like independent creators, I mean, forget about Marvel, DC, these guys have been there for a long time. They've been doing it. We've sort of drawn inspiration from that. So I think the future of superheroes is bright. There's a lot of creators who are creating some great stuff. There's this creator I saw in America who's just started up his private campaign of a new character, a new story, and it's just taken off. So I believe that with independent creators, there's fresh stories there that we're yet to discover. There's new writers, artists that are creating some amazing things, and I think the future is gonna get brighter and brighter as we go, because honestly every time I go to a Comic-Con I discover something new and something that is really grounded. And when you get independent creators, they pay attention to the detail. They've taken time to sort of reference their life into these characters, so you find something that is fresh and it's really interesting. So I feel like even when you go to Comic-Con and see the way people dress up, Comic-Cons and comic books and superheroes are always gonna be there, because it's characters, it's these sort of personas that we see ourselves into. So I think this future is bright, and it's gonna get better from here.
Sure. I'm gonna keep on this thread just now because it's so interesting.
Yeah.
Do you have an impression? You've spoken about the content creators, do you have an impression that readers are after something slightly different today in their superhero stories than they were after in the past?
Yes, I do think so. Then that's a good idea. If you see how when everybody gets Beats of War and they read it, they're like, this is different. Because I feel like so much that is out there, a lot of big companies, once you get too much money, you stop imagining, you stop going somewhere and get inspired and creating something original. So which gives us room, like creators myself and other creators who have fresh stories to sort of dive in and create something fresh. So the audiences are hungry for new, fresh stories. And I'll tell you this, my comic book happened to get into the hands of Mark Miller, one of the biggest comic book creators in Scotland, and he was like, this is the best thing to come out of Glasgow, Scotland, and he's super excited to see what I'm gonna create in the future. So you can tell people are looking for something new, something fresh. And the thing is, when people read my comic book, they're like, okay, and then I tell them my inspiration and why I create the characters. And once they see something, a story beyond what's written in the comic book, they're more super excited about what's to come. So yeah, it's exciting. So excited.
100%. You only have to open the page of your comic book and you can see that this is not just another superhero story. There's so much melding, there's so much nuances and originality about just the writing, but the artwork, everything about it.
And the thing is, because I come from a filmmaking background, I like to make sure that my comic books have got like lighting, depth. I want the readers to sort of be taken on this journey, not just plain images. So I'm super picky on what sort of artist I'm working with, from a skaters, because I do storyboards as well. So I sort of get that sort of experience into the comics. So I'm really super particular on how it's going to look, because I want to give the readers, the audience, an experience, a story, but I want them to sort of value what they're reading and be taken, escape, so I'm very excited.
I was going to ask you later in the conversation, but I think now is a good time to get into it since you're speaking about the artwork. But how important was it to find the right artist in Ben Wilsonham? That must have been huge for you if your art is such if the art is such an important part of the comic for you.
I mean, it was very important because for me, when you look at the comic book with Beats of War, all the characters in Beats of War are faces that are references to real life people that I know, cousins, uncles, my friends, my family. So all the characters in Beats of War, 90% of them are real people. So I wanted an artist who could draw characters that are close to looking human, but not human, but that have that comic vibe to it. So I was super particular on the sort of art I was going for. And when I met Ben the first time, his art just took me off. I saw the stuff he was doing. I was like, this is the guy I'm going to be working with. Reasons why I'm really particular with the art as well is because when I was growing up, I lost my mom growing up, and I felt like I wanted to put her in a story and keep her alive in that story and sort of have these conversations that I never had with her before she passed. So it was important for me to have characters that are sort of close to looking human but still have that comic vibe to it. So that's why it was very important for me to pick an artist that had that sort of experience, that had that sort of style that I was after. So it was really important for me, because at the end of the day, when I'm doing a comic book, it's not something I want to create and then put away as like, oh, let people buy it, right? It's something I want to hold on to and appreciate and be able to go back to and read and feel excited and feel that connection. So that's why it was very important for me, from the art, the references, the story, things that I've invested myself into, so that I care about it and people can see through that with the way I talk to them when I'm telling them about Beats of War. So yeah.
It's your complete creation. I had no idea about the characters being based on real people. That is not something I've known done before, to be honest. That's amazing. How did that come about?
It's because I've always, before I created the comic book, I'd read some comic books and I looked at the way they drew art from back in the day, which was really interesting. But most of characters had like they didn't really look like real people. They're like sort of cartoonish, comical, which is cool, right? I was like, how can I create something different? How can I care about this art, this comic book, this story more deeply? And then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get real life people who I care about, who are part of my life, my friends, and use them as references into these stories. And have my friends with me save the world together. Why not? And some are villains, yes, but they enjoy being villains in the story, which is quite exciting for me. So yeah, it was important for me to do it that way, because it makes me care more about the project, not just like I'm gonna do it and release issue 1 and that's it. I go back to Beats of War sometimes and then just read, get a coffee, go through the all this dialogue and look at the characters, and yeah, I've got that sort of connection to the story as well.
I'm going to move us along just a little bit now to something that's very relevant to the world we're living in today. Superhero comics have historically been dominated by white characters, both in the pop culture sphere with Marvel and DC, and in the independently published sphere. Beats of War is telling a story with black characters at the forefront. How far in your eyes have comic books come representation-wise, and how far have they still got to go?
I mean, it's been a long time coming, what they always say, you can tell your story better yourselves if you lived or you're part of that character, right? So with Stan Lee even creating the Black Panther in the Avengers, there's so many black characters he could create because he's not lived in Africa. So him bring the Black Panther was a huge representation, which I do love and I've always adored him as a creator himself, but he had not lived in the African culture, so the representation has always struggled. We have Black Panther, we've got other characters, but they're not super at the forefront like Thor, Captain America, and all that characters. So I feel like this is time for black creators like myself who've lived in Africa, who know about the African culture, to bring fresh stories, because I've lived in Africa. There's some games we've played in the village, the sort of instruments we played, the sort of music, the sort of stories that we've experienced that I would love to share with the world in a way. I'll give you an example, like in Beats of War, the mothership in Beats of War is based on the Titan crane in Glasgow, and warships are based on music instruments from Congo. So that brings two cultures together, and if you've not lived in Congo, you can't create that sort of spaceship because you've not physically held this music instrument. So that's how I'm bringing in my culture and my originality into the story, which I think even me coming from Africa, I've had so many stories from my great grandfathers, and I feel like I need to sort of bring in. And with characters, black characters not being represented, I can't really blame like these big companies, because you need somebody who's lived. So this is time for me, being in Scotland, being in a huge community of comic book creators. This is my chance for me now to share, and hopefully the world can sort of connect with the stories that I'm trying to So there's still a long time to go, but I mean, the way people have been responding to Beats of War, the future is bright. It's gonna get better from here, because I love the whole community here. People are supporting, sharing, spreading the news, and it's just a beautiful family. Like, I've honestly been in this comic book family for like 3 years now, and I've met the most amazing creators and writers, and it's just getting better from here.
It's a wonderful community in Scotland and Glasgow. But do you hear much feedback from people in Africa and the Democratic Republic of Congo? What are they saying about this, if they've read it?
Yeah, most of them that I hear from are from like the UK, have lived in the UK, have sort of moved here, and they have seen these characters and they have my story of the way I've sort of represented them. They were like super excited, because they were like, dude, we don't have anyone from back home who's creating comics, so it's exciting to see you representing us in that way, bringing in our culture in a more science fictional way. And they were like, most parents were like sending me messages like, this is a good comic book to give my children, to get them started on comic books. And obviously much older comic book creators, they were like, Etienne, this is exciting, this is different, and thank you for creating this. And the reviews have been great. They've been great. And sometimes with the courage of where I come from, not everybody understands comic books. So sometimes I need to sort of explain, tell them why I created this and tell them the sort of metaphors or these sort of ideas, and until they understand it. But the kids are super excited, and parents who do understand them have received them really well. And this is like my dream. It's like me reliving my 7-year-old dream, creating a comic book, creating a comic book that was on TV. Now to other young people who never been either exposed to comic books, and now they're sort of joining the world of escapism that we do love as comic book readers and creators and writers.
How does that feel to you that you've created a cross-generational comic book? That this is something that kids will love it, as well as, the older comic. I'm 26, I loved it. Anyone can pick this up and find something in it that can speak to them. How does that feel?
I don't know. It feels freeing. It's like I'm free, my conscience is clear. I feel like I'm connecting with the world, and I feel like I'm telling other kids who are growing up, who have these ideas and think that they can't do it. I'm telling them that they can do it, and it's time for them to open their mind to imagination. Honestly, I'm super happy, and I'm grateful, and I feel like my 7-year young self is like, yes, let's do it.
It's the power of writing, man, isn't it? It's something special.
Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about yourself now. And you've got a background in media and in filmmaking.
Yeah.
What was it that propelled you from screen to comic?
The first time I came to the UK, I went to watch, I think it's 2009. Yeah, I went to watch Avatar. I was blown away by the visuals, right? So I get home, I start researching on how James Cameron made this movie, how he went to visit these sort of the native Asians who sort of like lived in America, and they sort of got inspired by their life and created this movie to sort of show things that went through. It's with these stories. Sorry, could you repeat your question again? I got taken out there.
Of course. What was it that drew you from your background in filmmaking and media onto comic books? What brought you from screen to book? So
when I joined film, even after James Cameron movie, I joined film college to do film. I wanted to do these films because I'm into science fiction. But obviously, starting up as a filmmaker, they saw films you cannot do based on the budget. Maybe the way you need to build your career first before you can have access to money from big studios, before you can create big films. So I started off with drama, crime drama, but my brain kept saying, you gotta tell a science fiction story. You gotta tell a science fiction story. How are you gonna do it? How can you make people escape in the most affordable way, something you can do manageable? And then it was not until I went to watch Black Panther when it was released in the cinema, I was like, that's it. I go home. I remember I spent the whole night. I think I go home about 8. I was writing the first draft of the script till 3 in the morning of Beats of War. That's how it happened. I was like, this is it. I've always loved comics. I don't know why I never thought about creating one. And when that happened, I felt like with movies, I was like, okay, I need to give myself some time because films take time. I need to give people some stuff. Some films like drama, crime dramas that I can do right now with my budget, but my mind is thinking science fiction for the future. And how can I do that? Introduce people these characters that I want them to be ready for in future when I create these big films, comic books. And that's how it's happened. So that was the most easiest way for me to sort of tell these short science fiction stories, through comic books. And that's how it happened. And I was, the same energy you see I have in film is the same in filmmaking. So I was super excited to sort of transition. But I was introduced to the style of how comic books are written, how they're structured. It's something I've so hard to open my mind to learning and adapt to.
What, your main character, E.T. in the comic book, is someone who has been displaced by a war on his homeland. I'm not giving too much away there, but he's been displaced and he comes to Earth seeking help. How much of your own experience in in the Democratic Republic of Congo has found its way onto the page of your comic book?
I think so much of it, because obviously his planet is being attacked by nanorobotic invaders. That sort of reflects the world, the country I come from, affected by war for all these years, So that's sort of like the war that I was dealing with mentally. And now being in Scotland, I was like, okay, if I'm telling a story, I need to be as honest to myself as possible. So the war with the nanorobotic invaders reflects the war in Congo, and him on the journey to come and save his planet, coming to Scotland, is me. It's really my lived experiences that I'm sort of translating into science fiction and sort of trying to solve these world problems using comic books.
It's amazing that in everything you say, you get the perception that everything in your comic book is so personal to you, that's quite a rare thing. It's quite a special thing. What would you say to that?
I mean, it was very important because honestly, when you look at comic book creators who've been here, you look at Stan Lee, look at Mark Miller, other ones I have not mentioned, who've created all these great characters. I mean, I can't just come out of nowhere and try and top that. But what I can do is be inspired by what they created and be honest with myself and use something that is original to me, which is my story. I believe you have a different style. If someone gave you a piece of paper to write a story based on your lived experiences, they will be different from me. They'll be different from someone in America or South Africa or Japan. So your life experiences are something that are so unique to yourself as a person. So that's the only way I could have sort of come in, and being honest with myself was the only way I could have created Beats of War.
And as well as the personal story that is, you're coming from Democratic Republic of Congo to Glasgow. There's so much Glasgow in your work as well. It's ever present in Beats of War.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could fill us in some of your experiences of Glasgow. It's obviously touched you enough that you've inserted this into your story.
Yeah, I mean, starting with the funny stuff, I've honestly encountered like nades in Glasgow in a more dangerous way where I had to run home. I used to live in Postal, so I've made a couple few, and I've met some nades where give me backfires. Try this, bay. You up to where you from? They were just talking to me, so I've sort of experienced that. And Glasgow's having posters about people making Glasgow. Glasgow is such a working, city or country, Scotland itself. You stop lost and someone will point you in the right direction, right? But I've also faced some like injustices with the police. I remember I was driving this car it was like, when your car has a problem and they give you a courtesy car. I got given a very expensive car for like a few days to drive. I got stopped by the police like 8 times. And you know what? Same police officers 4 times. I was like, oh my god, so I can't drive a very expensive car. So these things sort of angered me, but I've seen the way my friends acted when police stopped them. They go into trouble, criminal record. I was like, all these sort of anxieties and experiences and things that I faced living in Scotland, I was like, how can I translate that into something more positive, something that I can deal with through a story? And that's how sort of comic books came to be. And I feel like Scotland is a melting point of many cultures. I love the way they welcome different cultures. This rich history of Scotland and the UK that I'm yet to explore, that I'm very excited to put into my comic book. Obviously with Congolese history in there. So it's just a lot of inspirations around. It's so many things to put in.
One of the more interesting parts, well, everything's sensationally interesting, but one of the things that struck me in the comic book was the gang.
Yeah.
The gang of, what should we say, delinquents.
Yeah.
Who possess, they play the role of antagonist. and your comics. Can you tell me a bit about those? Because those guys are really, really cool.
Okay, the Reza Gang. Yeah, so the Reza Gang, I remember I have a friend of mine called Liam Gaynor. We went to college together, so I was writing Beats of War draft, and he was at my house. He used to come to my house. I make him African food, right? So okay, I'm like, me, he writes script. I'm like, I'm working on a comic. He's like, hey, you're working on a comic? Are you serious? I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, but I'm struggling to find villains of the story, and there happened to be a Pinky Blinder episode playing on TV. I was like, those guys look really cool, man. Where are they from? He's like, these are not from here, mate. They're from down England. And I started asking him, I was like, who are the most dangerous gangs in Scotland? And he told me, you need to check out the Billy Boys, the Reza Gang. I was like, what is that? So I went on Google and started researching on the history, and I found out about this gang that ran the streets of Glasgow between 1920s and 1930s. They were like in suits, wore these sort of Bonjulu Pali hats, and they had knives. There's something
The
really...
Carlton Tongs.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. So I saw that, I was like, there's nothing more scary like a villain that is dressed in a suit that could... I feel like they could kill you without you expecting them, because you may think they're nice guys, or you may think that they're super class in a way that they won't go that extra mile of being violent. So I felt like I needed to use them. There's something about them that I felt drew me to the characters, and not just that, paying homage to the country, which is my new home now. I mean, live in Scotland. What's the best way to bring in the history that is there, that people know about, that makes people feel like they can connect stories as well, knowing about this Reza Gang. And by the way, everybody who read Beats of War, they're like, Etienne, do you live in Postal? That's where those guys were. They ran Glasgow and they passed through Postal. I was like, I was not here, but it was really interesting for me to sort of highlight them in the story. And there's so many avenues and story arcs that we've sort of developed with Beats of War that will get them really interesting. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, when after reading it, I was like, did we have gangs like this? And I went back and I researched them because of your work. So you're maybe you didn't know you would do this, but you have people researching Glasgow gang history now.
Definitely. The history should be lost. History is part of what makes us countries and humans, so just so highlighting it in the story keeps people aware of how the city was built, so which is I felt it was really important. So yeah, I'm very excited to sort of explore on their stories.
One of the other avenues that your story explores as well is war, which is constantly on the news right now. Has the ongoing conflict in Ukraine or in other parts of the world affected people's reactions to your comic book at all?
Not really. I think with Beats of War, every time someone is asking about it, they're asking about my inspirations, what made me create the story, and I think that's sort of the beats and the war part has sort of overshadowed that, so that has not affected in any way of people responding to Beats of War. So yeah, so it's been it's been the other way around, so it's been fine.
That was the next point I was going to make it on this issue was, do you feel that there's comfort to be had in the pages of Beats of War, even with everything happening in the world just now?
I think I know I don't have any discomfort. I think I'm at the point of my life where I'm super comfortable and happy with what I'm doing, and I think with human beings we need to be able to sort of consume some sort of medium to sort of escape. With so much things that are happening in the world, I would like my audiences, the readers, to sort of focus on the journey of E.T. What is he trying to do in the story, which is the positive side. I mean, with all these things happening in the world, this is our sort of reality, and I'm just here to tell a story that will help the readers escape and be part of my world, and hopefully be inspired to look at the world differently.
Comics are one of the best avenues for escapism. They really are, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I read books, but every time I got a book of this size, my attention span is short, so it's gotta be a really good book to be drawn into it. But comic books, oh, I can read 150 pages. You know, I'm into it. I can see the action. I can see it just takes you there. You feel like you're there. You're part of the action and what's going on. It's amazing.
Is it the artwork that does that for you? Is it the colours? What is it about the comic book?
The artwork with different tones. Like you get different artists, obviously, who gives you different tones of how the images look. So, like right now, I'm working on another comic book with a different tone. I want to make people feel a certain way while reading that. So colors are really important. And every time I'm at every Comic Con, by the way, what makes people come to the table is the artwork. They're like, that looks awesome. What is it about? If the artwork is bad, most likely people will just be walking past. I've noticed, you know, but the artwork has always pulled people. And I think people can tell if you really paid attention to all these details and made sure that you give them something you really put time to do, you know. So that's why with Beats of War, I want everybody who takes Beats of War to be, you know, to go and let it be your correctable, let it be a treasure, you know, something you're most proud to spend your money on. Yeah.
It certainly grabs you. You've got the comics behind you there. I've got them here. They're so colourful. So they're not just you'd love it just to have these, just to have them on your shelf to look at them, even if you're not, you know, a story lover.
Yeah,
they're brilliant pieces of art.
Yeah, definitely.
Can we talk a little bit now about the development process of your comic books, and particularly, you know, the collaborative nature of comics? Did you seek out to work with, you know, Gary Chudley, and how did that conversation begin?
I went to Clyburn College, right, which is now West of Scotland College. They've sort of merged, and when I was in college, I met some really cool, you know, lecturers who've been helping me in my film course. And when I wanted to create a comic book, I put a post on Facebook. I'm looking for a comic book co-writer to work with me on a comic book, which took about 4 weeks before someone replied. Really, my lecturer messaged me. He's like, Etienne, do you know that there's Gary who went to the same college as you, who's he was doing HND and I was in like NHNC. He's a comic book writer. You should get in touch. And then she sort of introduced us on email, and boom, the rest was history. But the thing is, the first time we met with Gary, I was super nervous because obviously I've written film scripts, right? So I had these ideas that were flying in my head. I wrote them down, had the notebook with different sketches and drawings that I've made. I was like, I hope this guy does not think I'm weird, right? You know, when you've not met a person for the first time, I mean, know about their background and how they are, if they're super excited as you about comic books. But when we met with Gary for coffee, I remember it was Secure Street in a Starbucks. Honestly, it's like we're in sync. You know, when you meet somebody and you're super creative and yes, yeah. It just happened. The spark was there, and then we started creating. And he saw my vision, and I'm really happy about the collaboration. It's a lot of stuff we created together.
You must be so pleased with that, because it must be a rare thing for creatives to have that immediate bond, the way that could go on to produce something so exceptional.
Yeah.
Pleased with that.
Yeah, for me, when I come into something new that I'm not experiencing, Gary was doing it for 10 years longer than me. I need to be open to suggestions, because I can't come in with a closed mind. Oh, this is what I want. This is how it's supposed to be. No, I wrote the script, but the format was like a screenplay in a movie. So that's different. You can't put too much in a comic book. You have to summarize and make sure that things fit in panels and make sense, right? And bringing in Gary has been doing that for a long time. So he's like, Etienne, this is how we're gonna structure it. This is the best way to put in, so that you're not giving too much away, and it gives enough visual understanding to the artist to be able to draw what we're writing. So I learned so much from him, and I was open to learning. And I guess when you're doing something like that, you need to, the best collaboration comes from being able to sort of, you know, just be open-minded. If someone suggests something, look at their ideas as well, because their ideas may add up to the big picture, because you all want the same thing. You want a good comic book, something that the audiences are going to love. So yeah, collaboration just sparked like that, and we started creating.
You've touched on my very next question, which was going to be how different is the process from creating a film to creating a comic? Has there anything in that process surprised you at all?
Yeah, I've been actually very surprised. Like, if you go to the first page of a script for a comic book, they break down what's happening, like the action and the dialogue and what you see in the images separately. So, for example, if a page has got 7 panels, you need to write number 1, or write like a script, okay, retro-futuristic civilization being attacked by nano invaders. So that's a visual that the artist is gonna use, right? And then you've got what's happening, who's walking or who's talking with his arms folded, and the dialogue under. So you have to break it down so that the artist knows why he's drawing in which panel, also for the letterer to know where to put the speech bubble. So now that I did not know, coming from a filmmaking background, you write a script which is 1 minute long. So my first page was full of dialogue that actually was able to be pulled up to 5th page. So it's sort of a transition, and I was open to learning. And when I did my first draft and sent it over to him, and he sort of polished it up, added in some ideas, spread it out, I saw the way they do it, which is not a huge difference, but you can't just come from filmmaking and be like, okay, I've created a script and I'm going to give it to a comic book artist. They'll be like, your mentor, I'm not drawing that. So there's that sort of difference in there, but no far from each other. But yeah, I was able to adjust. And even with my new comic book right now that I'm writing, I've been able to write it because of that experience. So.
Sure. And have you learned anything in comic book writing that you will be able to take back to the filmmaking world?
I think it always applies the same thing. Don't give too much away. Show them. Don't tell them. It's always, I've had to sort of hold off a lot of ideas I've had, right, to be able to put them in other issues, which was really hard. But it's kind of the same in film. But yeah, I've learned how to sort of hold off, show people, don't tell them. But also just be open to sort of cutting down the dialogue. You can, because I come from a French background, right? So the way I think sometimes is French. So I may think something that has 5 lines. And Gary can be like, oh, no, we can say this in English, and then it will make what you're trying to say. So there's differences there, but I've been able to adjust, and even living in Scotland and be able to speak English and learning more, it's kind of helped me with that, which has been great. Yeah.
Awesome. Now I'm going to go on to some questions we've had in our Q&A. A few questions. I'll go through them one at a time. So a question here: if you could have any superhero crossover within your Beats of War universe, who would it be? Which superhero would you like to do a crossover with?
That's a good question. So obviously I'm gonna bring my favorite character. I think I would bring in Batman.
Batman into Beats of War.
Yeah, into Beats of War.
That would be an interesting one. The big guy himself.
Yeah. I mean, you've seen the new Batman, right? Think of Gotham and how dark it is. How Gotham is dark.
That's the best version of Gotham, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, think about how Glasgow was in the 1940s. All the buildings were covered in coal. It was the sort of industrial revolution when the ships were being built. Coal was being used for like power. So everything was black, right? So imagine something like that and have Batman, E.T., and a sort of world violence with the Reza gang. I think that would be
fighting these gangs.
Yeah. That would be really dope. One day, and get it filmed in Glasgow. Yes.
There's a lot of filmmaking going on in Glasgow right now, and we have seen Batman very recently on our streets. So who's to say it won't happen again?
Nice one. Soon.
So we've got a question from Meg. Well, Meg, I hope you're doing well. Who would be your dream casting for Beats of War if you were ever to turn it into a movie?
Oh yeah. This is so the dream casting for E.T. or just general characters?
Any character. Who would you like to see play one of your characters?
To be honest with you, I would love to say that Idris Elba would play E.T. right now, but he's slightly older. I would be looking for a Scottish black actor who's, if from Scotland, right? Then to play the character. I think someone, and have someone from here. I think if you're from Scotland, that would be a best reflection of me, really, because you don't live here, you know how to speak like people from here, so that would make sense.
There's some terrific young actors out there.
Yeah,
Might be one of them.
yeah.
Lastly, if you could collaborate with any other author or artist across all of comics history, who would you like to have had or have had the chance to work with?
I would love to have had a chance to work with, obviously, Stanley. He's gone now, right? So he's like my top. But right now, I would love to collaborate with like Mark Miller, right? Hopefully, you can see this video. Let's collaborate. With the artist. Yeah, with the artists, I'm always looking for like to work with. I mean, there's some great artists who have done some great, amazing stuff in the world who I do appreciate. But I'm always looking to work with independent artists, and that would be a question of who have I worked with right now that started with me on Beats of War and the relationship I've had with him, and I would love to sort of have. If I worked with Mark Miller, that would be my collaboration with my artist right now. Because these guys who are independent as well, they deserve the spotlight, right? And I know some artists who are huge, who've done some amazing things that we respect, but I'd love to give it a chance to someone that I don't know, but possibly someone I know, like Ben, that I worked with, so that the world can see what he can do as well.
Awesome. We've got some comments in the chat. We'll go through them and see if we've got. Okay. There's a lot of love for Batman and Gotham and the whole Glasgow vibe.
That would be awesome.
Kind of music would that Batman crossover have given you a background in music? What would you like to see?
That's a good idea.
In such a crossover.
That's a good question now, because obviously I can't just put cosmic pop music, because I create cosmic pop that go with beats of war, sort of spacey, grounded with drums. But can you imagine like what Hans Zimmer created for The Dark Knight Rises? You know, the two horn, dun, dun, and then have some sort of spacey vibes, sort of entwined into those. I think that will be bringing E.T. and Batman together. So it'll be some sort of experimentation with sounds to sort of bring these two huge characters together. So I don't have a genre name for that yet, but I think we would sort of experiment with those two types of genres to see what we can come up with.
You can't go wrong with Hans Zimmer.
Yeah, you can't go wrong. Honestly, he's the best. So
the best, 100%. I'll move on now. We're going to talk some more about Glasgow in Scotland if we can. What is it about Glasgow that made you want to set this story in it? Let's go into the good stuff.
I mean, when I started researching on the Reza Gang, I started seeing images of how Glasgow looked in the 1920s and 30s, the shipyards, the workers, and then I went to Edinburgh and I discovered there's an underground city in Glasgow that was used through like the plague or something. So I like the sort of tone and the way it looked. And then I've discovered other abandoned train stations and underground parts of Central Station in Glasgow that look really interesting. So there's that look, you know, like when you're watching a Batman movie and there's that sort of dark look. I feel like Glasgow has got that in its own way with its history. So the landmarks, the infrastructure, the history of Glasgow has sort of pulled me into wanting to do a story. So it's just, you know, it's just a beautiful history and things that are around me that have inspired me. I mean, look, the mothership is in Beats of War is based on the Titan crane, so I had to pay respect to what was already there. So it's the history and the landmarks that really interest me, and I think that's what sort of brought me to that.
And you said as well earlier, and you mentioned it again now, that the motherships and the ships are based on this melding between what you've seen in Glasgow and what you had seen back home. Can you tell us a bit about that? Why did you choose the ships and the crane?
When there's some directors that I do, I kind of feel like most of my comic book work is sort of inspired from filmmaking and then comic book world and directors that I look up to. I found out that James Cameron and Ridley Scott, who create the Alien and Prometheus, especially Ridley Scott, looks at underground sea life of how animals that live underwater look like, and he uses that as inspiration to create his warships, motherships, or insects, things that people may not look at and draw inspiration. And as a person who loves nature and cultures, I was like, if I was creating beats of war, how can I have something that does not look like Star Wars, does not look like the Avenger ship? I mean, we've seen them, they're amazing, but how can I create something that was so original, that was so connected to people of Scotland, of Glasgow, and also was connected to my culture of where I come from? So when I remember this music instrument that is made out of a sort of flute that is put out to dry for 30 days, and they bend the wood, so they take the flutes inside, so it creates space in there. So when you put a wire and hit it with bottle tops, you create sounds, right? So that's like a famous music instrument in Congo. It's called umuduli. And then the Titan crane has always been outside my college in Cre8tive College, West of Scotland College. And it's always fascinated me. When I'm walking down the street in the city, like Buchanan Street, I look at humans and think about what we've achieved and what we're going to achieve in future. You can see my mind is already in science fiction. I'm fascinated. So when I stood outside and looked at the Titan crane, I'm like, this is so huge, this is so big, and I think it's got the scale of being a mothership in my story. So that's how they sort of ended, and that's merging two cultures, two countries together into an epic science fiction. And that will be something you've not seen out there. You not see a ship that looks like that with that story and with a sort of inspiration. So that's how all these things came to be. Yeah.
Do you always have that flick and the switch in your head when you're walking down the street and it's just the science fiction world is just ready to go? Is that always inside you every second of the day?
Yeah, more like in the Matrix, right? In the Matrix. But it's there because I always ask questions. Like you need to ask questions, and I think for me it helps me with my creativity, and it also helps me keep my mind open. And I think if you stop imagining and creating, I think if you stop that for humanity, it's like the end of us. All the things we've done around us is through imagination and creation, and the switch for me is always there. And you can tell with my excitement, because if it's not there, if I'm not enjoying what I'm doing, I mean, what's the point? So I have to still keep imagining and asking questions and looking at the world differently and imagining, and yeah, it's very exciting.
Awesome. On Glasgow, still on Glasgow, I've noticed some localisms and some of the issues of the story when Glaswegian folk are having their dialogue. Did you have any stories, any anecdotes that you would like to share about your encounters with Glaswegians?
Yeah, I'll tell you, like, when I came to Scotland, I used to go to the club, right? Like just like any other teenagers come out. When you come out, you meet people who've got a strong Scottish accent, So at some point, I remember I was like in a corner shop buying iron brew. There's a point where I really loved iron brew, and I had to stop and I go back to it. And then this guy, I think he was like drunk, and he's like, man, you got $5 man, like you could pass me on, like. He had a strong Scottish. I did not understand. I kept saying, sorry, what? And then my friend, they came running. They're like, Etienne, you okay? And then I was like, mate, like, I don't know what this guy is talking to me about. Like, I don't understand, right? Then they had to explain to me what he meant. So it took me time to understand the Scottish accent. And I felt like those stories that I've sort of experienced, it was important for me to sort of reflect that in the comic book, because if I make the English just typical, clean version English and there's no Scottish touch to it, it won't be as exciting. Because I get Americans messaging me and they're like, what does that mean? And then I have to explain to them, like, those things that, if you're from Glasgow, you understand what they mean. So I think that makes it different. And those experiences that I had encountering those people, having some of my friends have got that strong Scottish accent and they can switch between, he can speak funny and then just switch to speaking normal. Like, I've got a friend of mine called Lewis, because I'm a DJ as well. When I'm not doing comic books and stuff, I do DJ for fun, right? I remember went to New York and he went in New York with a Scottish accent, like strong Scottish accent. And every American wanted to speak to us because they were like, oh my God, you're from Scotland? And every time I tried to do it, I mean, everybody was like, it sounds amazing. But my friend Lewis kept saying, Etienne, you still got a long way to go, babe. I gotta teach you some words. But yeah, I've drawn all these experiences as inspiration to create the comic and put that in the comic books. I mean, it's set here. You gotta do it.
Oh yeah, it's a strong accent, and I think like people from Glasgow sometimes we gotta regulate how we speak because I've travelled abroad. Some people can't understand a word we say.
Yeah. And some of my friends from England, every time I go to England, they're like, Etienne, now you've got some really cool Scottish twangs there going on. Because I can switch sometimes. I'll be like, we saying, man? Like, I can say a few words, right? But they're not like as good. My young brother does it really good. And my young sister, because, I don't know, they're quite good with, so imitating and speaking the accent. Because they went to high school. Me, I went straight to college when I come. So they sort of, were young enough to sort of pick up these things and be able to be good at them. But yeah, I'm not the best at the Scottish accent, but I do try some words. And I think that's always fascinated me about Glasgow. And I felt like it was important for me to sort of reflect that into the comic book.
It's definitely made its way into your comic book. You're succeeding there, no doubt about it. Can we talk a little bit about the comic book community in Glasgow? We have a thriving comic book community as well as a pretty vocal science fiction fantasy community. What has been the response from these communities in Glasgow to Beats of War and to you as a writer?
To be honest with you, the response has been amazing. It's been amazing. I'll tell you, the first time I went to Comic-Con, the first time lockdown was being lifted and we were able to run a Comic-Con. That was my first Comic-Con with a table. I was super nervous. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if people are gonna come to my table. I didn't know. Honestly, I was blown away. The guys who had their tables kept coming, like, "Hi, Etienne, I've heard about you. Where you from?" They're super friendly, and then I started making a lot of friends who've done stuff for like Marvel, DC, writers and artists. Everybody's super friendly and they're supportive. They want to know what you're doing. They want to give you recommendations. They want to tell you what's happening next, where you can go. The community is amazing. And I think I was like not sure if I was going to fit in, but these guys have welcomed with open arms and it's been great since then. I'm enjoying the ride. I'm looking forward to other cons that are coming soon.
Awesome. The communities in Glasgow, whether it's comic books, fantasy, science fiction, they're so open, and you must be thrilled that you've had this reception.
Yeah, and I mean, can you imagine being in a community where the comic books are not like a thing, or the community is not welcoming? I could have been struggling, but I think I'm in the perfect place for it, and I'm glad I'm here, and I'm glad I'm able to connect and work with other creatives here, which is amazing.
Awesome. I'm going to go back to the chat. We've got a question again. We've got almost the same question. What are you looking forward to doing next in the series, without any spoilers? Anything that you could fill us in on what's coming up?
Okay, in the series, the first 5 issues are sort of grounded in Scotland, and the 6th and 7th issue will probably take you to space, and will probably take you back to 1920s. Can you imagine a comic book that is set in 1920s? the look of it, I think that would be pretty awesome.
Oh, I cannot wait. that's my era. I love everything 20s and 30s. You've noted, this is another question, you've noted that you're working on something else at the moment. Is it something we might see soon?
Yes, hopefully I'll tell you next year, Halloween. I've already announced. Yeah, it's called Jelani. It's another story that is part of. It's an alternative Earth. It's a new story that I've created, and it's coming. Then it's a graphic novel, so it's bigger than Beats of War. It's not just a comic book, so it's like about 50 pages. So it's more story to it, and the character is part of the same universe as E.T., but it's something different. It's something really fresh, and every Comic Cons now, I do carry trading cards for Beats of War that have got information that I cannot say right now. But if you have those trading cards that I'm printed out, those people have access to the character and what the character is about. So that's really exciting for me. So next year is going to be good.
I'll have to come and get some in the next Comic Con. Yeah, that sounds amazing. It must. You're creating. It seems like you're creating a whole universe, an ET universe.
Yeah, I'm creating the Etienne universe, and to be honest with you, all these characters come to me like organically. Like when I was creating Beats of War, I never thought I was gonna create another sort of character that is part of the same universe but with a different story. I just traveled, got inspired by characters, went back to Africa, and then something came to me, and I was like, why not? Because it's just I don't always want to say like, oh, let me create this issue and then I'm gonna create another story and another story. I want to stay grounded to one story and keep people at the same pace and not lose them. So that's why you see with Beats of War I have that consistency of releasing issues. But with this Jerani came to me naturally. I was like, you know what? People have 5 issues of Beats of War, and I think it'll be a great time to introduce them to a new character, probably the same universe, but they will still be getting something different that is fresh, but they will still be getting Beats of War as well. So yeah, I think it's exciting. It's exciting, and I'm creating these stories for the audiences. People who love stories, who like to escape, and I hope you guys will love it as much as you love Beats of War.
I'm sure we will. We can. I can't wait. I'm sure the viewers can't wait. Everyone who had read your story, they can't wait. They want to see more content. And on that note, we have 3 issues of Beats of War out just now. Can you tell us when we might see a 4th?
So the 4th one will be coming out between October and November, so that's ready to go. I'm just planning the release. I want the release to be huge. So issue 4 will be coming, and then after that, 3 months after that, issue 5 will be coming. So every 3 months, I'll be released to complete the 10. So that's the schedule. So no October, anytime between October and November, it's gonna come out.
We'll be watching for it. I'm getting us on to the final topic of discussion tonight, Glasgow 2024. We are confirmed to host WorldCon in 2024. How exciting is it as a content creator for Glasgow to be hosting a WorldCon, and what would you like to see from a WorldCon hosted here?
I think with Glasgow 24, it's giving us a foot door to the world of science fiction. What you're doing to expose us to the world, it's such an amazing thing, and I'm very excited to be there and be able to connect with other creators, people who love science fiction, people who love to read stories and love escapism. And what I would love to see there is more obviously representation, creators like myself being given opportunity to showcase their work, but also local creators who have been doing great stuff being given opportunity to sort of host talks and have tables and sort of showcase what sort of stories they've put out there. I believe there's amazing creators here in Scotland, and I cannot wait to see them being given the opportunity. So yeah, I'm very excited about this. This is like, you know, when you open the door to another Marverse in Doctor Strange, this is how it feels like with Glasgow 24. You're opening up a door to the world of science fiction, and I'm very excited to be part of it.
And we're bringing it home, we're bringing it here. It's going to be so exciting, it's going to be super exciting. The ethos for our WorldCon is a WorldCon for our future. what can we do to live up to this vision? What can we do to promote diversity and inclusion properly, in your mind?
I think just give people a voice to speak, to showcase what they have to showcase. All the creators of color or other creators local that have been creating some good stuff, just give them the opportunity to showcase what they've been creating. And I think independent creators, especially the future of comic books, because they've got some new stuff that people are yet to discover.
100%, 100%. Finally, I suppose, do you have any events coming up that you would like people to know about?
So this weekend I'm gonna be at SCCC doing Glasgow Comic Con for 2 days, and I'm doing Monopoly on the 8th and 9th of October in Edinburgh next month. So yeah, I'm pretty busy. I've got lots of Comic Cons coming up, and yeah, I'm very excited to get Beats of War to people there.
Awesome. Well, I hope everyone who's a comic lover in Glasgow will be able to come and see you at the weekend then. Very exciting. So we are coming to the end of this wonderful event, and I would like to thank you, Etienne, for coming on tonight. It has been wonderful. Everyone at Glasgow 2024 is delighted and grateful for your participation tonight, and hopefully we see more of you soon.
Definitely, and I hope to see you soon as well. And thank you for inviting me. I had a very exciting and interesting conversation, and I enjoyed it.
No worries. Now, for viewers who want to learn more about Glasgow 2024 and what we have coming up, I do have some announcements. Our next fan table is at Opticon on the 15th and 16th of October. Come along, say hi. We would love to meet new friends and supporters, and we'd be delighted to see you there. Also at Opticon, the Glasgow 2024 team will be running the Hybrid Book Club. This is an event that we're delighted to be running, and our chosen book is Walking on Glass by Ian Banks. All Opticon attendees are welcome to join us in person at Croke Park, Dublin, or online. This event is on Saturday, the 15th of October from 5:30 to 6:30 Irish Standard Time. We also have some more exciting events planned in the very near future. Glasgow 2024, on the Thursday, the 13th of October, we have the Basilisk's Hoard, a night of fantastical poetry. Coming Halloween week, we have Halloween Horror, reclaiming paganism from horror, which is another exciting event, let me tell you. Thursday, the 10th of November, we have medieval fantasy, food, fact, or fiction. So keep an eye on all our social media for more information about these events, as well as for any and all exciting announcements that we have coming up. Now this event tonight, like all events run by Glasgow 2024, would not have been possible without our volunteers. If you've enjoyed tonight, then consider volunteering. We are always on the lookout for enthusiastic and excited volunteers who feel that they can bring something to Glasgow 2024. So once again, I would like to thank Etienne Kubwabo for this event, and thank you to all our viewers on all of the platforms. This has been Glasgow 2024, a world con for our futures. Have a wonderful evening, everyone, and I'll see you soon.